The sun rose gently over the town of Odukanu, spreading a warm golden light across the red earth. The air carried the smell of roasted maize, fresh clay, and early morning fires. This was a place where the past and present lived side by side, where stories walked on two legs and wisdom flowed through every breath of wind. Elders sat beneath the great Irako tree at the center of the town, their backs straight and their eyes sharp. Even in their silence, they seemed to be telling stories of old battles, old love, and old lessons. One of them, Baba Kanda, tapped in his carved walking stick on the earth and said in a low voice, "This land remembers more than we do." Children ran to the dusty paths, their laughter echoing like birds calling from the treetops. Some chased each other with pieces of palm leaves. Others played a small game of rolling old bicycle tires. Their joy rose into the warm air, mixing with the distant beat of drums that never slept for long in Odukanu. Women wrapped in bright cloths walked to the market, balancing baskets on their heads, as if they had been born with them. They discussed everything: prices of tomatoes, the stubbornness of their children, and the behavior of certain men who thought they were too important now. Their voices rose and fell like waves, adding to the life of the town. But even as life flourished, something else stirred beneath the surface. In one corner of the town stood tall, shiny buildings, new places with foreign names, owned by people who valued money more than culture. Expensive cars rolled through dusty roads that had never seen such things before. Young men wearing polished shoes and tight suits hurried past their elders without greeting them. Some even laughed at the traditions they once respected. When a child forgets the voice of his mother, he becomes a stranger in his own home, Mama Decca muttered as she watched a group of boys walk by with their noses high in the air. The contrast between old and new created a silent tension. You could almost see the two worlds pulling away from each other, one holding on to wisdom, the other chasing shadows shaped like wealth. Yet, in the heart of this tension, one sound kept everything connected: the talking drums of Odukanu. They sat on a raised wooden platform near the market, guarded by elderly drummers whose hands were as disciplined as soldiers. Every morning the drums spoke. Their rhythm traveled through the town like the heartbeat of the ancestors. Dum-de-dum, dum. The sound was deep, powerful. Those who listened closely often said the drums had their own voice. Some claimed they understood the human emotions. Others believed they carried messages from the spirits of the land. But all agreed on one thing: the drums remembered everything. A little boy named Yuba stopped in the middle of the road as the drums began to speak. His eyes widened. "Mama, are the ancestors talking again?" His mother smiled and smoothed his hair. "They are always talking, but only those with clean hearts can understand their warnings." Even the wind seemed to pause when the drummer struck a certain pattern. It was a rhythm that felt heavier than usual, like a whisper wrapped in thunder. Baba Kanda closed his eyes and listened. He murmured. "The drums are restless this morning." A younger elder leaned forward. "Do you hear trouble coming?" Baba Kanda nodded slowly. "Something is shifting in this town. Pride is rising like smoke from a burning house. And smoke always finds a way to sting the eyes." A group of teenagers walked by, rolling their eyes at the old men. One of them laughed. "These elders think the drums can talk. They should join the stage actors in the city." The elders said nothing, but one of the drum keepers raised his voice. "Mock all you want, but when the drums speak of judgment, even deaf ears will hear." The teenagers walked faster. As the day grew brighter, the rhythm of the drums continued to move through Odukanu, reaching every home, every heart. The beats seemed to carry a warning that many felt but could not explain. It was as if the spirit of the town was preparing for something. A storm of choices, pride, and consequences. And somewhere in that same town, the heart of a young man was slowly drifting toward the kind of trouble the drums always try to warn against. The morning sun climbed gently over Odukanu, pouring a soft gold across the narrow paths and clay homes. As the town awakened, the marketplace roared to life like a living creature stretching its limbs after a long sleep. Vendors lifted their wooden stalls open, dusted off their tables, and called out their goods with voices that carried pride, struggle, and a little drama, just enough to draw customers closer. "Fresh pepper. Pepper that wakes even the sleeping ancestors," one woman shouted, shaking a woven basket filled with bright red peppers. Another man raised a bundle of dried fish toward the sky. Come and buy, fish that survived the river spirits. The air was thick with the scent of roasted groundnuts, fried bean cakes, sun-dried spices, and freshly cut mangoes. Colorful fabrics hung from ropes, dancing in the breeze like flags of forgotten kingdoms. The cloth shimmered under the sun, deep blues, fiery reds, earthy browns, each pattern telling a story of ancestry and identity. When the wind blew, the fabrics waved like elders greeting old friends. Young girls in neatly wrapped headscarves walked from stall to stall, negotiating prices boldly as if they were seasoned queens. Old women watched them with quiet smiles, whispering, "Even the river starts as a drop." But beneath the beauty of the market, something else stirred, an unspoken tension between the old and the new. In one corner, a freshly built glass shop stood proudly, shining like a misplaced jewel. Its owner wore polished shoes and spoke with an accent he had borrowed from the city. "You people should try modern things," he said loudly to a group of women buying vegetables. "These traditional foods and old methods will not take you anywhere." The women exchanged glances, hiding their amusement. Mama Sua stepped forward, adjusting her wrapper. She said calmly. "Modern or not, even a chicken knows where it came from. A man who forgets his roots is like a tree without soil. He will fall." The man smirked but said nothing. Before their argument could grow, the sound of the talking drums rose from the town square. The drums were old, older than most of the families in Odukanu. Their surface bore scars from endless festivals, announcements, warnings, and ceremonies. They were not ordinary drums. The elders said the drums could taste the hearts of people, that they carried memories of every joy and every betrayal in the land. Dum, dum-de-dum-dum, the rhythm floated through the air, powerful enough to make even busy vendors pause. "Ah," whispered an old woman, closing her eyes. "The drums are restless today." A young boy tugged at his father's sleeve. "Papa, what are the drums saying?" His father leaned down. "They speak in ways only the wise can hear. But one thing is sure, the drums do not forget." Across the marketplace, people stopped what they were doing. Some tilted their heads, listening carefully. Some felt a chill move through their bodies. Others simply watched the drummers with quiet respect. A traveler passing through the town asked, "Do these drums always sound like this?" An elder beside him replied, "No, today they beat like a warning. Something is changing, something the ancestors do not like." The traveler frowned. "What kind of warning?" The elder sighed deeply. Pride, disrespect, a heart turning away from its mother. The drums can smell danger before the wind carries it. The traveler watched as vendors resumed their calls, though their voices now carried a softer tone, as if the drums had gently reminded them of something they had forgotten. The fabrics waved again, this time less like decorations and more like silent witnesses. In the middle of this colorful, noisy, beautiful chaos, the drums kept speaking, slow, steady, and haunting. They beat with the memory of old stories. They beat with the weight of unspoken truths. They beat with a warning that soon a great mistake would shake the town. And though no one knew it yet, the drums had begun telling the story of one man's pride, one mother's pain, and the price that would be paid when a heart forgets where it came from. The morning light washed over Odukanu like a blessing, warming rooftops made of clay and iron sheets. The town was alive with color, sound, and spirit. Children running barefoot along winding paths, mothers sweeping their compounds, elders exchanging greetings that carried the weight of decades. Everywhere you looked, tradition stood firm like a tall baobab tree that refused to bow to any storm. Yet just behind this world of old wisdom, a new kind of life was growing, loud, shiny, and restless. The young men wore clothes so expensive they looked borrowed. Their shoes shined like polished mirrors. Their voices filled with a confidence that sometimes sounded like arrogance. They walked past the elders without the slow, respectful bow that had always been a sign of upbringing. One elder sighed and said, These children now walk faster than their shadows." Some shops were old, simple wooden stalls handed down from generation to generation. But right beside them stood new glass buildings with names in foreign languages. Their owners talked about profits, investments, and international suppliers. Words that felt strange in a town where people once valued stories over money. But even with all this change, one sound refused to fade from Odukanu: the drums. They sat in the center of the town on a raised earth mound, shadowed by a large flame tree whose red flowers fell like tiny sparks. The drums were ancient, crafted long before most families had even been born. Their leather skins were carefully oiled, and their wooden bodies were carved with symbols of spirits, animals, and old kingdoms. Children were told from birth. These drums did not just make sound. They speak. When the drummers took their places that morning, the marketplace fell into a softer hum. People paused their movements, turning their ears toward the rhythm that began to rise. Dum, dum, dum-da-dum. It was not ordinary music. It was a voice. The drums spoke like wise messengers, steady, patient, and powerful. Each beat carried a whisper of something older than the town itself. Some said the drums held memories of forgotten kings. Others believed the drums could feel the hearts of those who walked past them. Mama Decca placed her hand on her chest. "Ah, the drums are heavy today." Beside her, a young girl asked, "Mama, why do they sound sad?" Mama Decca looked toward the drummers. "Because the drums know things before we do. They feel when the wind carries trouble." An elder drummer, Baba Oru, lifted his hands and began a deeper, slower rhythm. His eyes were half closed, as though he was listening to a voice only he could hear. A passing trader asked him, "Baba, what are the drums saying this morning?" Baba Oru did not stop playing, but his voice rose above the beat. "They speak of hearts that are turning away from their roots." Another drummer added softly, "They remind us that nothing done in this land is ever forgotten." The wind shifted, carrying the drum beats over the rooftops, through the market, between the new buildings trying to change the town's face. Even the proud young men walking past their elders slowed down when the rhythm touched them. Just for a moment, a traveler who had not heard talking drums before stood still. "Do the drums always talk like this?" An older woman shook her head. "No. Today, the ancestors are awake." The traveler frowned. "Awake for what?" She answered with a voice thick with meaning. "Judgment walks slowly, but it never gets lost." The drums continued to speak, weaving through the air like ancient spirits searching for the truth. People felt the message even if they could not fully understand it. There was a warning inside those beats, gentle yet firm, patient yet urgent. Somewhere in the rhythm, you could almost hear words forming. Remember who you are. Remember where you came from. Remember what you owe the land that raised you. And although the town carried on with selling food, bargaining prices, and gossiping about the troubles of young men, nobody could deny that the drums had touched something deep. It was as if the ancestors themselves had opened their eyes, as if they could sense a storm of pride and disrespect coming toward Odukanu. As the drum spoke louder, a faint tension entered the air, small, invisible, but strong enough to move through every heart. The story of one man's fall had already begun, even though the sun had only just risen. The sun rose gently over Urumbo, a town where every morning carried a heartbeat of ancient drums and the laughter of new dreams. The air smelled of roasted maize and wet earth, and the wind carried the voices of children running through narrow paths lined with mud-walled homes. These houses stood strong, like wise elders, holding stories older than anyone alive. But behind them, like silent intruders, tall glass buildings climbed toward the sky. Their bright windows reflected the sun in sharp, cold colors, clashing with the warm clay walls that had sheltered generations. New money had begun to flow into Urumbo, and with it came noise, engine, phone alarms, and business talk that fell out of place among the old songs. Elder Mbeku, the oldest drummer in the town, sat beneath the great baobab tree polishing the talking drums. The drums were dark and smooth, decorated with carvings of spirits and ancestors. As he cleaned them, the skins hummed softly, almost as if whispering. He nodded slowly. "Ah," he murmured, "they remember. These drums, they remember everything." A young boy named Sefiu approached him, carrying a school bag but staring longingly at the drums. "Babu Mbeku," he asked, "do the drums truly speak?" The old man chuckled, his voice deep and warm. "My child, these drums have carried the truth of this land longer than any man. They warn us. They guide us. And when a heart turns greedy, they shout louder than thunder. Sephew looked around at the busy street. A donkey cart passed beside a roaring motorcycle. Women in bright wrappers balanced baskets on their heads, while young men in shiny suits rushed to offices in the new buildings. The old and the new swirled together, each trying to claim space. From across the road, a merchant raised his voice, arguing with a construction worker. "Your machines shake my house." "The walls are cracking," the merchant yelled. The worker pointed at the new building rising behind him. "Old things must make way. This is progress." People gathered, whispering. Some nodded with the merchant, others with the worker. The tension felt like a rope pulled from both ends. Elder Mbeku struck the talking drum once. Boom! The sound rolled through the street like a warning. Everyone fell silent. "Listen," Elder Mbeku said, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "Urumbo is changing, but if we forget who we are, the spirits will remind us in painful ways. These drums," he tapped them gently, "they see the pride rising like a storm. They will judge what we become." Sephew swallowed hard. Will the town ever be the same? Mbeka looked toward the glittering buildings and then toward the humble clay homes. "Nothing stays the same, child, but those who forget their roots lose their strength. Even a tree grows tall only because its roots go deep." Just then, another heavy machine roared to life behind the houses, shaking the ground. A crack formed on the wall of an old woman's kitchen. She cried out, and neighbors rushed to help. The talking drums vibrated again, soft, trembling like ancestors sighing. Elder Mbeku placed his hand over them. "A test is coming," he whispered. "Urumbo will have to choose pride or unity, greed or truth. And the drums will speak when the time is right." As the sun climbed higher, the mix of donkey carts and scooters moved on, the old and new still colliding, still struggling. But beneath it all, the heartbeat of the talking drum continued, steady, ancient, and waiting. The town of Urumbo woke with a strong heartbeat, as it always did. Women swept their compounds while humming old folk songs. The sweet smell of mandatsi floated from a corner stall. Drummers warmed their hands near small fires, preparing for the day's rhythms. Children chased each other between clay huts, kicking up fine red dust that sparkled in the rising sun. Even with all this life, something in the air felt different, like a drum that had been struck offbeat. Behind the old homes, shiny towers rose like strangers. Their glass faces were cold and unblinking, ignoring the warm greetings of the people who passed by. Expensive cars purred along the roads, brushing shoulders with donkey carts that had carried families for generations. It was a world split in two, trying and failing to move together. Under the great baobab tree, Elder Mbeku sat with the talking drums, touching their carved sides with gentle respect. The drums made a low, trembling hum, almost like they were whispering secrets from long ago. "Ah," the elder sighed, "the drums remember everything, even what we try to hide." As he spoke, a group of teenagers strolled by. Their clothes were flashy, tight jeans, bright sneakers, shirts with foreign words. They moved like they were walking a runway, heads held high, sunglasses even though the sun had barely risen. One of them, Kido, imitated the way visitors from far cities spoke. He tilted his chin and said loudly, "Bro, these old people need to upgrade their lives. Who even listens to drums anymore?" His friends laughed in excitement, clapping their hands in mockery. Another boy, Toma, mimicked the traditional greeting of bowing slightly to elders, except he bent too low, twisting his face into a silly expression. "Look, look," he shouted. "I greet you, a wise ancestor." The group burst into laughter again, pointing at the drummers nearby. The older women at the market paused, shaking their heads. One said, quietly, "These children have lost their shame." But Elder Mbeku remained calm, although sadness shadowed his eyes. He tapped the drum lightly. Boom! The sound was deep, like the earth itself speaking. The teenagers jumped a little, surprised. Kido frowned. "Old man, stop scaring people with that thing." Mbeka looked at them with a slow, steady gaze. "My sons," he began gently, "a river that forgets its source runs dry. When you mock your roots, you weaken your own spirit. Toma rolled his eyes. Spirit? We just want to live big. New life. New money. No more village jokes. The elder leaned closer, voice low. Do you think wealth comes only from tall buildings and shiny shoes? Even the tallest tree falls when its roots are shallow. The teenagers exchanged looks, half amused, half irritated. Keto shrugged. We're not trees, old man. We're moving forward. They walked off, laughing again, playing loud foreign music from a small speaker. The songs drowned out the gentle sound of women, singing traditional tunes. Elder Mbeku touched the drums again. This time they did not hum. They growled, soft, angry, alive. He whispered, mockery is the first crack in the wall of a home. And once the wall cracks, even the smallest wind can tear it down. A young girl named Lena, who had been listening quietly, sat beside the elder. Babu, she asked softly, why are the drums angry? The elder looked toward the teenagers disappearing into the modern streets. Because the drums see the pride growing in our youth. They see hearts running after shadows, leaving wisdom behind. If the children forget the ways of their people, then the land itself may rise to remind them. Lena shivered. Will something bad happen? The old man nodded slowly, but firmly. Not yet, but soon. And when it comes, the drums will speak louder than any voice in Urumbo. Behind them, the glass buildings shimmered like waiting eyes. The mud homes stood firm, like patient elders. And between them, the laughter of the Mada youth echoed without care, while the talking drums remembered every sound, every insult, every warning ignored. The wind picked up, brushing the drum skins with a faint whisper. It sounded like a message, a warning, a coming storm. The sun climbed gently over Urumbo, waking the colors of the market. Women in bright wrappers arranged mangoes in neat piles. Young men sharpened knives for the day's work. Drums throbbed softly in the distance, like the heartbeat of the land. But even in this warm glow, the elders of the town felt a quiet shift in the air, like a bird flying without a shadow. Near the old baobab tree, Elder Shamari, Elder Nala, and Elder Mbeka gathered. Their faces carried years of wisdom, and their eyes carried years of worry. The talking drums rested beside them, their carved symbols glowing in the soft morning light. They gave off a gentle rumble, as if thinking deeply. Elder Nala was the first to speak. Her voice was calm, but heavy. The children walk like they own the sky. Their feet touch the ground, but their minds are flying someplace else. Elder Shomari shook his head slowly. They rushed in new ways, forgetting the old paths that kept us standing. As if summoned by the words, a group of young men passed, dressed in stylish clothes, speaking loudly, laughing without care. One of them bumped an old woman without apology. Another tossed his empty drink on the ground beside a shrine stone. The elders watched silently. The talking drums let out a low, warning thump. Boom, boom, a sound like thunder walking. The young men paused only for a moment before continuing. Elder Mbeku sighed deeply. You hear the drums, my brothers and sister? Even they grow restless. They remember everything the land has taught us. They remember the balance we once had. Elder Shomari ran his fingers across the drum carvings. This pride, it grows too quickly, like a fire in dry grass. A young girl named Lena, carrying water, stopped nearby. She bowed respectfully before asking, Babu Shomari, why do the drums sound angry today? The elder looked at her with soft eyes. Child, the drums are not angry. They are warning us. They speak for the spirits who walked here before us. Lena frowned. Warning us about what? Elder Nala pointed toward the road where the ewes had disappeared. When pride rides on a fast horse, wisdom struggles to catch up. The girl repeated slowly. Pride walks faster than wisdom, as if trying to understand its weight. Elder Mbeka nodded. Yes, my child. And when pride runs too far ahead, it loses its way. It stops seeing the stones on the road. It stops hearing the voices that guide it. The wind blew softly, lifting dust from the earth. The talking drums trembled again, almost like they were whispering to each elder in a language only the old could understand. Elder Shamari looked toward the modern buildings rising behind the ancient homes. Shiny glass reflecting the sun, ignoring the clay walls that held the town together for generations. "Urumbo is changing," he said quietly. "But change without humility becomes destruction." Elder Nala tightened her wrapper around her shoulders. "We must speak soon, before the children forget where they come from, before they forget who they are." Elder Mbeka lifted the drumstick and tapped the talking drum once more. Boom! The sound rolled through the streets like a warning from the ancestors. People paused. Mothers looked up. The market quieted for a heartbeat. Lena whispered, "The drums remember everything." And Elder Shamari replied, "Yes, and one day the children will learn that the drums also judge." The breeze grew stronger, carrying dust toward the new city buildings and rustling the leaves of the ancient baobab. The town stood between two worlds, one of memory, one of ambition, and the talking drums felt the weight of both. Something was coming, and the elders knew the first sign was the loss of humility. As the sun dipped behind the hills of Urumbo, the town shifted into its evening rhythm. The market women closed their stalls. The scent of roasted maize drifted through the air, and shadows stretched long across the red earth. Yet no matter how busy the day had been, the people knew there was one place they had to gather before night swallowed the land. Under the ancient baobab tree, the talking drums waited. Their carved faces glimmered like old spirits waking from sleep. The elders arrived first, carrying stools worn by time. Children followed, running barefoot, their laughter settling into quiet whispers as they reached the circle. Even the proud Jews, those who preferred shiny phones and foreign music, stood at the edges, pretending not to care but listening all the same. When the crowd was ready, Elder Shomari lifted the drumstick high. He struck the drum once. Boom! The sound rolled through the evening air like a memory returning to life. Another strike. Boom! The town fell silent. Elder Shamari's voice flowed with the calmness of a man who had seen seasons rise and fall. "My children, my brothers, my sisters, the drums have called you again, because the land remembers, even when we forget." Beside him, Elder Nala nodded. Her eyes swept across the crowd. Young, old, rich, poor, all gathered as one. "These drums," she began softly, "they are not just wood and skin. They are the footsteps of our ancestors. They carry stories that never die." Elder Mbeku tapped the smaller drum gently. Its tone was sharper, like a whisper nudging the heart. He spoke. "Tonight, they remind us of Cato the Hunter, a man who let pride blind him. At once." The children leaned forward. Even the youths, pretending to be uninterested, lifted their eyes. The talking drums began a slow rhythm. Tum, 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 the beat of a story being born. Elder Shomari continued. "Cato was brave, but he forgot respect. He mocked the old ways. He walked past the elders without greeting. He said the spirits were only shadows." One of the boys at the edge muttered to his friend, "Sounds like some people we know." A few people chuckled, but Elder Nala raised her hand. "Silence. Listen." The drums beat faster. Tum, tum, tum. A reminder of mistakes echoing across time. Elder Mbeka said, "Because Cato forgot humility, he lost his path in the forest. For 3 days, he walked in circles. He heard voices calling his name, but none were human. A woman gasped quietly. A child clung to her mother's wrapper. Elder Shomari looked around the circle, his gaze deep and serious. And when he finally returned to the village, the drums spoke loudly that night. They told his story, so others would not repeat his steps. Elder Nala added, "That is why we gather here, because the drums are our memory. They retell our victories. They retell our mistakes. They retell the truth we try to hide." The youths shifted uncomfortably, knowing the words touched their hearts. One of them, Jabari, stepped forward slightly. His voice was soft. "Mama Nala, do the drums still remember everything we do now?" The elder gave a slow nod. "Yes, child. Actions do not die. They walk with us. They return to us. The drums only speak what we deliver to them." The boy swallowed hard, understanding the weight of his choices. The night breeze cooled the air as Elder Shomari tapped the drum once more. Boom. The elders bowed their heads. "Let us not become a people whose stories are filled with regret," he said. The beat softened, turning warm, like a reminder wrapped in love. Families rose from the ground. Children rubbed their sleepy eyes. The talking drum sat silently again, but the people knew the truth. They had spoken. They had warned. They had remembered. And tomorrow, the town would choose whether to honor the message or repeat the mistakes the drums had already told 100 times. In the heart of the town of Ogunloy, morning light spilled over clay rooftops like golden cloth. The air carried the smell of roasted maize, red earth, and palm oil from the market women already arranging their stalls. Children ran between the huts, laughing as they chased each other with woven palm frond toys. The elders sat beneath the great iroko tree, their wrappers tied firmly, their walking sticks resting by their feet. It was a town alive with culture, music, and old wisdom that walked beside every soul. Yet something new was rising. Shiny jeeps rolled past the dusty paths, stirring the red earth into restless clouds. Young men in polished shoes and crisp shirts strutted across the market square as though the ground owed them space. Their phones flashed like tiny mirrors catching the sun, and their laughter was loud. Too loud, some elders whispered. Alongside the old carved wooden doors now stood new metal gates, tall and proud, as if competing with the sky itself. Mama Rolu sighed as she watched. "The world is changing too fast," she murmured, adjusting her head tie. Baba Fagbemi nodded, his eyes deep as a well. "Change is not the enemy," he said. "But when a child grows too tall, he forgets those who held him upright." Above all this, the talking drums began to play. They rested on the raised wooden platform in the center of the square, old, shining with the touch of many hands, their cowhide skins stretched by generations of drummers. When they spoke, the town listened. Some said the drums held memories of the ancestors. Some said they remembered every truth hidden behind every smile. This morning, their rhythm was different. Ko, 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 ko. GBA ran, GBA, ko, ko. The sound rolled like distant thunder, low and unsettling. Market women paused mid-sail. Even the children froze, their laughter trailing off as they looked up. "What are they saying today?" whispered a young girl. An old drummer, Pa Alawunmi, stepped forward, his gray beard swinging as he leaned close to the drumheads. He placed his ear against one, listening as though the drums themselves were breathing secrets. His face tightened. "They speak of footsteps that walk too far from home," he said. A hush fell around him. "Ha! What does that mean?" asked the trader. Pa Alawunmi ran his fingers across the drumskin. "They say pride is rising like smoke, and smoke hides the face of truth." A few of the young men laughed. One of them, Teo, who always wore dark glasses though the sun barely touched him, scoffed. "Drums don't judge anybody. They're just drums." The elders turned to him slowly. "Be careful, my son," Baba Fagbemi said, his voice calm but sharp like a hidden blade. "These drums have carried our victories. They have cried our sorrows. They know when a heart forgets its home." The drum sounded again, louder now, almost urgent. Ko, ko. GBA ran. The wind seemed to carry the beats farther in the square, pushing them between houses, into open windows, even into the new shiny cars parked proudly like kings without crowns. Mama Rolu whispered, "This is a warning. I feel it in my bones." Even Teo, though he tried to maintain his proud posture, shifted uneasily as the beat throbbed to the ground beneath his feet. The drums continued, sending their message like a shadow stretching across the town. Ko, remember, ko, everything. And though no one said aloud, many felt the same cold truth settle in their hearts. Judgment waits for anyone who forgets where they come from. The drums ended with a final, sharp KO, a sound that hung in the air longer than seemed natural, like a promise or perhaps a threat. As the market slowly returned to life, a sense of unease lingered. Old roots and new wealth stood side by side, neither willing to bow. And beneath it all, the drums, now silent, seemed to watch, waiting for the next story to unfold. The sun had begun its slow descent over the town of Isle Bayo, painting the clay rooftops with molten gold. The streets hummed with life. market women calling out their wares, children chasing shadows along the dusty paths, and men moving swiftly to finish their day's tasks. Yet beneath the ordinary bustle, a quiet tension stirred in the air. By the great baobab tree, elders gathered, their shadows stretching long over the red earth. Elder Ifedeo rested a hand on the carved walking stick that had guided him through decades. Beside him, Elder Adana traced the grooves of the talking drums, her fingers trembling slightly. The drums began their soft, uneven beat. Tum-tum-tum. It was familiar, yet different, an undercurrent of unease threaded through the rhythm. Even the children paused, tilting their heads as though listening for words hidden in the sound. Elder Ifedeo's voice broke the silence. Listen well, my people. The drums do not speak for themselves. They remember all, our pride, our mistakes, the respect we owe to those who came before. A group of youths, dressed in bright foreign fabrics and laughing loudly, passed through the square. They mocked the elders, imitating the old ways with exaggerated bows and playful sneers. One of them stepped carelessly over a small shrine, kicking a stone aside. The drums rumbled deeper, their tone darkening. Boom, boom, boom. Even the bravest among the young men froze. The rhythm carried a weight, a warning only the wise could read. Elder Adana shook her head. The ancestors stir in their graves. They whisper through the drum beats that the land will not forget. The youngest of the children whispered to her mother, "Mama, the drums sound angry?" Her mother smiled tightly, pulling the child close. "Not angry, little one, only remembering, always remembering." Across the market, Tund, one of the prideful youths, laughed and waved his phone. "It's just noise. Old drums, old stories." Elder Ifedeo's eyes narrowed, his gaze heavy like the weight of the sun. "You do not hear, yo." The wind stirred, sweeping dust into the air. The shadows of the elders and the baobab twisted unnaturally as the drum beats deepened, almost like a voice warning that something unseen was drawing near. "A time comes," Elder Adana murmured, "when those who forget their roots will feel the weight of the past. And the drums, they will not remain silent." Even the market animals paused. A goat bleated nervously. Dogs whimpered, as if sensing a presence invisible to human eyes. Tun felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at his friends, laughing nervously now, sensing without knowing what the elders meant. The drums beat once more, slow, deliberate, and foreboding. Boom, keo, boom, keo. It was as if the land itself was speaking, a quiet, inexorable truth that no pride, no wealth, and no mockery could outrun. Elder Ifedeo tapped his drumstick lightly, the echo softer now, but no less urgent. "Remember, respect your roots, honor your ancestors, and humility will guide your steps. Ignore them and the darkness waits." The market resumed its rhythm, but the air had changed. A shadow seemed to linger behind every laugh, every hurried step, a whisper of consequence for those who will forget the wisdom of the land. And in the heart of Isle of Bayo, the talking drums continued to murmur. They remembered everything. This script builds suspense, foreshadows consequences, and reinforces the cultural symbolism of the talking drums, while keeping the language accessible and dramatic.